You know, we have this rather peculiar idea in our culture that helping others is always the right thing to do. We've been taught since childhood that to be a good person, a spiritual person, a loving person, you must always say yes. You must always give. You must always be available. And if you hesitate, if you pause, if you dare to set a boundary, then something must be wrong with you. You must be selfish. You must be inconsiderate. But what if I told you that this entire notion is backwards? What if the compulsive need to help everyone, to fix everyone, to rescue everyone isn't actually love, but a form of interference? A way of interrupting the very lessons that life is trying to teach. Think about it. When you continuously rescue someone from the consequences of their own actions, what are you really doing? You're not helping them. You're keeping them trapped. You're preventing them from learning. You're standing between them and the wisdom that only comes through experience. Now, I'm not suggesting that we become cold or indifferent. That would be another extreme, wouldn't it? The question isn't whether we should care. The question is how we care and, more importantly, who we choose to pour our energy into. Because you see, there are certain types of people who will drain you completely. They will take and take and take. And no matter how much you give, it will never be enough. And the tragedy isn't that they're taking. The tragedy is that you're preventing them from growing. Let me share with you 7 types of people you must learn to recognize. Not so you can judge them or condemn them, but so you can protect your own energy and allow them to face the very experiences they need to awaken. Number 1, the chronically lazy. There's a difference, you see, between someone who is struggling and someone who has simply given up. The person who is struggling will take your help and use it as a stepping stone, but the chronically lazy person will use your help as a hammock. They've made a decision, whether consciously or unconsciously, that life is too difficult and someone else should carry their weight. And the moment you step in to help them, you become that someone else. You become the person they depend on, not because they can't do things for themselves, but because they've discovered that someone will always do them for them. Now observe what happens in nature. A bird doesn't bring food to a chick that refuses to open its mouth. A tree doesn't continue nourishing a branch that bears no fruit. Nature is very clear about this. If something isn't producing, if something isn't contributing, eventually it gets cut off. Not out of cruelty, but out of wisdom. The chronically lazy person will always have an excuse. They'll tell you about their difficult childhood, their bad luck, their unfair circumstances, and some of this may be true. But here's the question you must ask. What are they doing about it right now? Are they taking any steps, however small, to change their situation, or are they simply waiting for someone to come and fix it for them? When you help someone who refuses to help themselves, you rob them of something precious. You rob them of the satisfaction of their own achievement. You rob them of the strength that comes from overcoming difficulty. You rob them of what they need most, which is the discovery that they are capable. Some of you have been carrying people for years. You pay their bills, solve their problems, clean up their messes, and every time you do, you tell yourself you're being kind. But what if your kindness is actually keeping them weak? What if your help is the very thing preventing them from standing on their own 2 feet? The lazy person needs to feel hunger. They need to feel discomfort. They need to experience the natural consequences of their choices, because it's only when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the pain of change that they will finally move. Number 2, the perpetually ungrateful. Have you ever noticed that some people can receive an extraordinary gift and treat it as if it were nothing? You could give them your time, your money, your energy, your very heart, and they'll take it without a second thought. No thanks, no acknowledgement, no appreciation whatsoever. This isn't an accident. This is a character issue. Gratitude isn't just good manners. Gratitude is the sign of a person who recognizes they are part of something larger than themselves. A grateful person understands that every blessing, every gift, every kindness is an ode to them, but is given freely. And when you understand this, you treat gifts with reverence. But the ungrateful person believes the world owes them. They believe your help is their right, and the more you give them, the more entitled they become. It's a strange paradox, isn't it? The more you pour into them, the less they appreciate it. I once knew a man who helped a friend pay their rent for 6 months straight. Month after month, he sacrificed his own comfort to ensure this friend had a roof over their head. And you know how the friend responded? They complained. They complained that the apartment was too small. They complained that the neighborhood wasn't nice enough. They complained that they had to live this way while others had more. Not once did they say thank you. Not once did they acknowledge the sacrifice. And when the 6 months ended and the man could no longer help, you know what happened? The friend got angry. They felt betrayed, as if the help they received wasn't a gift, but a debt that was now being unfairly collected. This is the nature of the ungrateful. They don't see kindness. They see weakness. They don't see generosity. They see opportunity, and they will take and take and take until there's nothing left of you. When you help an ungrateful person, you're not planting seeds. You're throwing them into a bottomless pit, and no matter how much you throw in, the pit will never be filled. Number 3, the arrogant and self-righteous. There are people who don't want your help. They want your validation. They don't want your wisdom. They want you to confirm what they already believe, and if you dare to offer anything that challenges their view of themselves, they'll reject you entirely. The arrogant person isn't suffering from a lack of knowledge. They're suffering from excessive pride. They believe they already know. They believe their way is the right way, and anyone who suggests otherwise is simply wrong. Now, pride is a curious thing. It disguises itself as confidence, but it's actually fear. The arrogant person is terrified of being wrong because their entire identity is built on being right. If they admit they don't know something, if they acknowledge they need help, their whole sense of self begins to crumble. And so they double down, they defend, they argue, they reject. You can't help a person like this. Not because they're beyond help, but because they don't believe they need it. And until they come to that realization themselves, anything you offer will be wasted. Jesus walked away from people like this. He didn't chase them. He didn't beg them to listen. He simply said what needed to be said and moved on because he understood something very important. You can't force wisdom into someone who is committed to their own foolishness. The arrogant person must fall. They must experience the consequences of their pride. They must hit the ground hard enough that they finally look up and realize they don't have all the answers. And only then, when they're humbled, when they're broken, will they be ready to receive help. Number 4, the habitually wicked. Now, I want to be very careful here because we live in an age where people don't like to use words like evil or wicked. We prefer softer language. We say someone is disturbed or misunderstood. But there are people in this world who aren't confused. They know exactly what they're doing and they do it anyway. The wicked person isn't someone who makes a mistake. We all make mistakes. The wicked person is someone who has made wickedness their way of life. They lie, cheat, manipulate, harm others without remorse. And when confronted, they don't repent. They justify. When you help a wicked person, you become complicit. You enable their behavior. You give them the resources to continue doing harm. And let me tell you something. They will use what you give them not to change, but to deepen their wickedness. There's a reason why wisdom traditions across all cultures warn against supporting those who do evil. It's not because we lack compassion. It's because we recognize that some people have chosen a path that leads to destruction. And if you try to pull them off that path, they'll only drag you onto it with them. The wicked person doesn't want to be saved. They want to be empowered. They want someone to fund their schemes, to cover their lies, to clean up their messes. And if you take on that role, you're not helping them. You're partnering with darkness. Number 5, the incurably foolish. A fool isn't someone who lacks intelligence. A fool is someone who refuses to learn. They make the same mistakes over and over again. They ignore advice. They reject wisdom. They touch the hot stove repeatedly and then wonder why their hand is burned. The difference between a wise person and a fool is very simple. A wise person learns from experience. A fool doesn't. Now, here's what makes this particularly difficult. The fool will often come to you in distress. They'll be in crisis. They'll be desperate, and your heart will be moved by them. You'll want to help. You'll want to rescue them, but if you look closely at their history, you'll see a pattern. This isn't their first crisis. It's not the first time they've needed rescue. In fact, they've been in this exact situation multiple times before, and each time someone helped them, and each time they went right back to the same behavior that got them in trouble in the first place. The fool is like a person drowning in the ocean who refuses to grab the life preserver. Instead, you keep throwing it to them. They keep flailing and splashing and sinking. And if you jump in to save them, they'll drag you down too. You can't save a fool. Only life can teach them. Only the consequences of their own actions can break through their stubbornness. And if you keep intervening, you prevent those consequences from doing their work. Number 6, the master manipulator. The manipulator is perhaps the most dangerous person on this list because they're the hardest to recognize. They don't come to you with demands. They come with stories. They don't take from you directly. They make you want to give. The manipulator understands human nature. They know that good people want to help. They know that kind people feel guilty when they say no, and they use this knowledge as a weapon. They'll tell you exactly what you need to hear. They'll play on your emotions. They'll make you feel special, needed, important, and before you know it, you'll be doing things for them you'd never do for anyone else. The manipulator is a shapeshifter with one person. They're the victim with another. They're the hero. They change their story depending on who they're talking to. And if you compare notes with others who've dealt with them, you'll find that the stories don't match up. When you help a manipulator, you're not helping a person in need. You're feeding a system. You're providing resources for them to continue their games. And the moment you stop giving, the moment you see through the act, they'll turn on you. They'll paint you as the villain. They'll tell others how you wronged them, and they'll move on to their next target. Number 7, the impenitent rebel. Finally, there's the person who knows better but refuses to do better. They've been taught, they've been warned, they've been corrected, but they don't care. They've made the decision to continue on their destructive path, and nothing you say or do will change their mind. The impenitent person isn't ignorant. They're defiant. They know what's right, but they prefer what's wrong. And when you try to help them, they'll nod and smile and agree with everything you say. But the moment you turn your back, they'll go right back to their old ways. This is the hardest type of person to let go of because you can see their potential. You can see what they could become if only they would change. And so you keep hoping. You keep believing that this time will be different, but it never is. The impenitent person must want to change, and until that desire comes from within them, all the help in the world won't make any difference. You can't want their healing more than they want it. You can't fight for their freedom harder than they fight for it. And if you try, you'll exhaust yourself while they remain exactly the same. So what do we do with all of this? Do we become cold and indifferent? Do we stop helping people altogether? No, we learn discernment. We learn to recognize the difference between someone who is struggling and someone who is stuck. We learn to distinguish between someone who needs a helping hand and someone who wants a free ride. We learn to see clearly without judgment, but also without illusion. True compassion isn't enabling. True compassion sometimes means stepping back and allowing people to face the consequences of their choices. Because often it's through difficulty, through adversity, through hitting rock bottom that people finally wake up. When you help the right people, you see fruit. When you pour into fertile soil, you see growth. But when you give to those who aren't ready, who don't want to change, who will only use you and drain you, all you'll see is waste. Your energy is precious. Your time is finite. Your resources are limited, and you must be wise about where you invest them. Not everyone deserves your help, and that's not cruelty. That's wisdom. So ask yourself today, who am I helping that I should let go? Who am I rescuing that needs to fall? Who am I enabling that needs to face their own consequences? And when you find the answer, have the courage to step back, not with anger, not with resentment, but with the understanding that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is allow someone to experience the full weight of their own choices. Because in the end, you can't save anyone. You can only point the way, and whether they walk that path or not depends entirely on them.